Now in this video, let's focus on data types because as we construct our tables, we have to tell SQL Server what kind of data we're going to be storing in each one of the columns in our tables. Now, a data type defines and controls the data that we put into our columns. This becomes our first line of defense when it comes to guarding our data integrity. Now, data integrity is the overriding factor of every database administrator and database developer's life. This is why database people treat you like you're some sort of evil, criminal, dangerous type anytime you mentioned adjusting the tables, working with the tables, or anything like that. Because if they have, like, say, 3, 4, terabytes of data, and the data integrity gets fouled up, then most of that data becomes impossible to relate to the other data, and so it all becomes pretty much useless. And so just try to understand why these people are so irritable and why they're so mistrustful of everybody else in the company, because they've been charged with protecting this data, and there's a lot of it there. So the first line of defense on your data integrity is to determine, hey, what kind of data can you store in this column, and don't let us put anything other than the right kind of data. Now, there's two kinds of data types in SQL Server. There are system data types that come built into the system, which is what we're going to talk about here. And then there's user-defined data types, which we'll talk about and show you in a separate video. Now, the data types that are available in SQL Server can be broken up into just a few main groups. The first group let's talk about are the character types. And these are used to store character, or what in most programming fields is called string data. But anytime we want to store characters, we're going to use some sort of string type. This will be varchar, character data. And by the way, I'm going to go through a separate video for each one of these data types and show you each data type, what you can store in it, and any oddities or things you need to know about the data types. Now, the next one is an exact numeric type. Now, an exact numeric type will store integers, that's a whole number, and fixed decimal point types. And it will always produce the same result. Now, what that means in English is this thing takes a lot of memory space, and it provides a lot of space for decimal points to provide the ultimate in accuracy, and it will do this regardless of your processor architecture and regardless of the magnitude or the size of the number. Keep in mind, this is just like saying, a Mercedes SL550 is a really nice car, and you pay a lot for that. And an exact numeric type you also pay, and you pay in terms of the memory that this data type uses to store your data. The next one are approximate numeric types, and these are the ones we use most often. They have floating point values, which means that when you use a decimal point, it might move around a little bit and will round up or down, and it can represent numbers that are too large or small to be represented as integers. And we're talking about, the exponentials and that sort of thing. Now, this will affect the accuracy of results. So you don't want to build a banking database, an investment database, or, those kinds of things using approximate numeric types. A lot of scientific things, because you could see some differences in your outcomes. Now, the next one's date and time. Now, there are some new and improved data types in SQL Server for date and time in SQL Server 2008. And the big deal is we no longer store the data for the date and the data for the time in the same data type necessarily. And that has always been a problem. I just want to know what day something happened, but it's reporting to me the day and midnight and that sort of thing, and I had to strip it out and all kinds of things. We will talk about date and time in a separate video. Now, binary data types store a 0 or a 1, and a lot of database developers and designers love the binary data type, because instead of yes, no, do I allow it or not, are they granted access or not, I can just simply stick a 0 or a 1 in there. They query really quickly. There's only 2 types of data that can be there. All kind of cool things can happen. So you'll see that a lot of database developers, designers, and administrators love the binary data type. Now, that's a real quick review of the data type groups, and in the next few videos we're going to take each group individually and talk about the individual data types, the limitations in the space that you have in each one, and you need to become aware of this or make you a list or a cheat sheet or whatever and put on your wall so that you can quickly determine what kind of data type that you have, because you want to have a data type large enough to store your data, but not so large that you're wasting memory, and not too small so that you run out of space. And we'll talk about that more as we go through each individual data type group.